Bow. As we've covered before, it is the truest definition of a glass cannon. Arguably the highest damage potential in the game, combined with insane levels of mobility, range, and complex stamina management, making it an insanely high skill ceiling weapon, and the second most popular weapon in Monster Hunter world. And even though we've previously made a meta video about bow for patch 5.01, a lot has changed since then. Namely, the introduction of Kjarr weapons, Nergigante Gamma armor, and the community realizing how powerful Stamina Surge actually is. So, with these changes, how do you maximize the damage on your bow? Well, I'm JinJinx.
And I'm Tuna. And we're
the Monster Hunter Math Guys. And this is Monster Hunter Meta updated bow sets for Pre Iceborne.
In this video, we'll be covering the new meta sets for bow. These will be the highest damage options until Iceborne comes out in September. Now, many of the current meta sets for bow are Kjarr bows, but where it's applicable, we'll also be mentioning the best craftable bow sets. Also, Stamina Surge is very strong on bow, and Constitution 1 with Black Belt and Dash Juice is now considered the best combo. We recently put out a video explaining stamina management, optimal constitution levels, and how good Stamina Surge really is. So link to that in the top right if you haven't seen it yet. If any of the upcoming stamina skills talk is confusing to you, we recommend you check it out. We'll also be covering Cons 3 and Cons 1 sets, as well as all reasonable variations of the Stamina Surge sets. By reasonable, we mean sets that don't sacrifice much in terms of damage skills to run that level of Stamina Surge. This means a lot of elements won't be able to use Stam Surge 3 because it's simply too expensive. This does mean, though, that there will be a lot of sets. We're talking over 40 total. To make this easier to digest, we'll be breaking this up into two videos. The first will be covering Fire, Ice, and Thunder, and the second will be covering Water and Dragon, as well as a third separate musing video on the difference between Dragonbone and Val in the upcoming Iceborne patch.
And as always, our builds will include the standard attack buffs as well as the best damage coating that particular bow can run in order to give us the best case scenario for damage output on EFR. And in case this is your first time seeing our bow meta videos, all of the builds will be running critical elements as well as capping the elemental attack in as much affinity as possible, along with standard bow skills like Mighty Bow, Spread Shot Up, Normal Shot Up, etc. Bow is an elemental weapon and gains significant damage if you elemental match your weapon to the monster's main weakness. Raw bow is a meme unless you're spamming wall shots on a monster. As always with these videos, I want to start off with a quick disclaimer. All the builds, analysis, breakdowns, and everything we do on the channel are not meant to tell you how to play. Unless you are a speedrunner or care about max deeps, these are not the only way to play and we are not suggesting that. The purpose of what we do is to educate and inform. It's to give you the factual information on the relative strengths of different builds and playstyles so that you can make informed build decisions. This video series is meant to provide you with accurate information about what builds produce the highest DPS in Hunt. It is not meant to state that this is how you should play. Play how you like and enjoy yourself. It is a video game after all. And before we get to the builds, I do want to quickly apologize about the videos taking so long to come out this week. I had dental surgery on Monday and did not expect it to take so long for me to recover from that. And I wanted to make sure that the Iceborne Switch Axe video came out before this weekend so people could know the information going into the beta. I actually started recording that video on Saturday, but because of obligations on Sunday and then my dental surgery and recovery, I couldn't get it finished until yesterday. Either way, I apologize again for the delay, and here are the builds. Alright, let's start off with the Fire Bow builds. So for Fire Bow, Angerbow is still king of the castle. This thing is a fat old stat stick, and none of the other firebows introduced after it have ever been able to top its insanely high stats. So this here is the Constitution 3 build. It, like every other bow build you'll see, runs only affinity augments. Attack augments aren't worth it on bow due to the elemental and raw split nature of the damage, and health augments just suck on bow. You only proc the healing on 1 arrow per shot. Because this is roughly 10% healing, that's around 2 to 5 HP per shot. Yay!
You can't fit more than one Stamina Surge on this bow with Constitution 3, but that's why we have a Cons 1 version. Nothing really changes, you switch out the Surge deco for a Cons deco and change the charm. Obviously, you have to eat for Phalanx Black Belt and Dash Juice to make this Cons 1 set work, but you gain 1 Stamina Surge, which is a lot comfier to run with. Worth it in our opinion, especially because it only costs you a food voucher to run. As we mentioned earlier, the Angerbow is the best fire bow. It also happens to be the best craftable. But if you have the Kjarr bow and really want to run it, this is what the Cons 3 set looks like. There are about 5 armor variations that give you these exact same skills. This particular set is the one with the highest defense. So I guess you could say that makes this one the best one? All up to you and your particular style, I suppose. We don't normally say this because there's usually just one best set, but having 5 to 10 variations to achieve the same meta skills is a common trend for Kjarr bows. So we'll be giving you the highest defense / extra skills builds, and if there's an easier to obtain version, we'll try to give that as well. With 65.2 more EFR, but 18.03 less effective element, this bow will not be hitting as hard as the Anja bow, but it has 100% affinity, which can make it potentially better for damage counting on a monster. What we mean by that is applying the right amount of damage to get a monster to trip. For instance, Kushala has 600 on the head and then he gets knocked out. But that's a topic for another video.
And here's the easier to achieve version of the build. And yes, the Kjarr bow will be hitting weaker than the Anja bow will, but that's only for now. The higher EFR on the Kjarr bow makes it hit harder on monsters with a 70 or higher hit zone value for raw shot and a 25 fire hit zone value. The problem is, in Monster Hunter World there isn't a single monster like that, except for Val Hazak's broken head, but you don't exclusively shoot that when fighting him. The fire weak monsters in the game simply have low shot hit zone values but high fire hit zone values, which makes the Anja's stat stick better. And also potential changes to bow in Iceborne will very likely make the Kjarr bow better for when that game comes out. However, that is a very long discussion, so we'll leave that to the third video in this series when we're going to discuss the changes in the beta for Iceborne and what it potentially means for bow when it comes out.
Here's the Cons 1 set for the Kjarr bow. It gains an attack boost and an agitator. Neato. It's probably the least impactful Cons 1 set on this list, but it technically has higher damage. You can also change out the legs for Dante's and get the same skill loadout, in case you don't have the Xenogamma legs. Next up we have Ice. For Ice bows, the Kjarr stream is just a straight up upgrade to the leggy bow. This is of course excluding Katie, where it becomes more back and forth depending on the DPS versus CC combos and other factors. But we already have a video on that, link at the top right.
The Constitution 3 sets have a few variations. Let's look at the Stamina Surge 2 set first. This is the best of the Stamina Surge 2 sets out of all of the options because it has the highest defense and gets a max smite for free, so yay? Now, when you use your quick shot and you have full stamina and you whiff a weak point, you get a juicy 10% more affinity. OP, please nerf.
Jokes aside, Cons 3 and Surge 2 is pretty hard to pass up. This is the slightly easier to obtain version. It doesn't require any Nerd Gamma pieces to achieve, but you lose the free max might.
Oh no!
So the thing about Kjarr stream compared to the leggy bow is that like all Kjarr weapons, it has a lot more EFR in exchange for less EFE. In other words, more raw damage and less elemental. On all the current Ice Weak monsters in the game, the difference between the builds levels out to basically the same damage on crits. However, stream gets 100% affinity and leggy does not. There's also a Stam Surge 1 version of the set. It gets 2 crit boost out of it, which roughly averages to 2 more damage per arrow at max charge level. Up to you whether that's a worthy trade for losing a level of Stamina Surge. It's honestly hard to say because it's a very personal preference. However, if you want to have your frosty cake and eat it too, there's a Cons 1 version of the set. It gets 2 crit boost, 2 Stam Surge, and you drop to 1 con.
That's some tasty cake. This build literally gets all of the benefits without any of the necessary trade-offs of the Cons 3 set, so definitely worth running as long as you're willing to burn a dash juice and a voucher.
Here's the easier to obtain version. It requires less rare decos and no Kaiser Gamma head. On either of these, if you'd rather run Crit Boost 3, you can sub out a Surge deco for a crit boost. This will give you roughly 1 more damage per arrow on max charge shots, but you drop to Surge level 1.
And if you really want to run Stamina Surge 3, this is the build for it. You lose 2 crit boosts to run it, and frankly, Surge 3 is kind of overkill in our opinion. But if you want to run it, this is the best ice bow option for it. Next up is the Leggy Bow, the second best ice bow. This is the Constitution 3 version. This is still a very good ice bow if you don't have the Kjarr version. It has 10% less affinity and deals roughly the same damage on crits against most ice weak monsters. So if you don't have the Kjarr ice bow, then this is definitely the one you want to go with. And it is a very, very pretty bow. Unfortunately, Leggy Bow cannot afford to run Surge and Cons 3 without losing a lot of affinity or other important skills. It sucks, but them's the breaks. If you want to run a level of Surge, you have to drop the Constitution 1. Con 1 lets you run that 1 Stamina Surge without dropping any of these important damage skills. Neato. Any higher levels of Stamina Surge, however, will cost you a lot of damage, but again, them's the breaks. If the Kjarr bows weren't better, then there wouldn't really be a good reason to farm them.
Finally, we have the Thunder sets. Thunderbows, much like fire, did not actually improve with Kjarr. The Kjarr Spark is just the worst Kjarr bow in terms of stats. This, combined with the frankly low levels of hit zone values on Thunder weak monsters, makes Thunder the worst element in the game. It's the most common decent hit zone value, but the monsters truly weak to it are barely weak to it. The exception, of course, being ATKT before she releases, which we also have a video on for builds for that. Link at the top right. That all being said, the KD Thunder is still, by far, the hardest hitting Thunder bow. The Cons 3 sets for the Terra Thunder haven't changed. We run Thunder Attack 3 because the fourth point only adds 10 more Thunder Attack. Against most Thunder weak monsters in the game, this will just round down to the same damage per arrow. It still can't fit Stam Surge, and none of the new armor pieces make it better. But if you want to run Stam Surge in the build, you can run Cons 1. Again, this requires a voucher.
Now, the Constitution 1 build does gain 1 surge level. Unfortunately though, that is it. Tareth bows are very expensive to run, between the free element 3 needed and the critical element armor pieces being very inefficient. That being said, Stamina Surge 1 is a very good boost to DPS uptime as we've previously discussed. Definitely worth it for the cost of a voucher each hunt in our opinion. Now for a unique one, the Stamina Surgeless Cons 1 build. The Tareth Arrow Thunder is the only one where it might be considered worth it to run versus a Stamina Surge 1 set. It gains a crit eye, a crit boost, and an attack boost from dropping the level of Stamina Surge. This totals to a 26.4 EFR gain and a 0.81 effective element gain. This is not a huge amount by any means, but by far it is the most damage gained from any of these bow sets by dropping Stamina Surge 1. We still don't think it's worth it compared to running Stamina Surge 1, but it is an option.
Next is the Kjarr Spark. Despite being the worst Kjarr bow, it's still the second best Thunderbow option.
This is the Constitution 3 version. It also gets 2 Stamina Surge, which is pretty nice. While this does have 41.14 more EFR than the Tareth bow with power coatings on both, it has a staggering 19.99 effective element less. That is a lot, even against the low Thunder hits and values on the Thunder weak monsters.
Still, Stam Surge is nice, and this will be comfier.
Now really the only exception to this being worse than the Terra Thunder bow is specifically against Nergigante because he has terrible thunder hits and values. So against him specifically, you will be dealing slightly more damage due to the high EFR, emphasis on slightly.
You can run Cons 1 just by changing around the charm to a Surge charm and 1 Surge deco to a Cons deco. This gives you Surge 3, and there's nothing else worthwhile to fit into it at this point. But Surge 3 is ultimate levels of comfy. Here's an alternative build to achieve that. It requires slightly less limited time armor pieces. While the Kjarr Spark does deal less damage, it does get you more surge if you value that over the damage that the Terra Thunder gives you.
Now, as for the best craftable Thunder bow, we aren't going to include builds for that. Technically, the best is the Kadachi Strike Bow, but that is an extremely qualified quote-unquote best. It was and still is the worst craftable bow out of all of the elements. Combined with how low Thunder hits and values are in general, it's just bad. If you don't have the Terra Thunder or the Kjarr Spark, you're genuinely better off running either the second best element for that monster or just running Blast Bow for something like Nergigante. Just don't run blast coatings with your blast bow because it completely guts your damage. Yes, the Kadachi Strike Bow is so bad, we're recommending blast bow. Alright, that about does it, guys.
As always, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, you know what to do. If you made it this far, pizza or lasagna? Shout out to Honey at Honey Hunter's World for providing the tools we use to make sets.
And a thank you to 2D. 2D is always the first to make an album about new meta bow sets whenever the meta changes. So while the sets in his albums may differ slightly from the ones we have in the video, I do use his albums as the basis to reduce the iterations for set searching. And a second thank you to him for simply discussing all the bow intricacies and build variations with me as well. And an especially big thank you to Alessia. She is a phenomenal bow speedrunner and one of the moderators over at our Discord server. And her bow speedruns are all of the beautifully executed background footage you're seeing in the background for this video. Link to her channel in the top right and the description. Speaking of our Discord server, the Mathalessness, be sure to check it out if you'd like to come chat with us or just hang out in general. There is a lot of fellow bow users on the server. And make sure to follow us on Twitter if you'd like updates about videos or just things that interest us, and be sure to check out Tuna on Twitch where he streams Monster Hunter World and various other games almost every day. And these videos do take a lot of research time, so if you'd like to consider supporting us directly, check out our Patreon. And an especially big thank you to MC Persona, Foray, Yoshi Cho, David Sternberg, XCLK07, Haika, Milky Powder, David Zhu Sinclair, Warren Kios, Hensatsuken, Wed Manticore, Dr. Awesome Farts, Litha Bowley, Bram Orsel, Anti-Spartan, Lightweight, PB Livingston, Jordan Petit, Skylar Yang, Checkleman, Lupin, Mongus, Kumiko, Triple Agent, Alan O'Dom, Baguette, Zimv, Billy Barthol, Magister Obscura, Jamie, and every single one of you who supports us on Patreon. You guys are seriously the heroes of the channel. Because of you, we can continue to do the heavily researched, in-depth, and very content-heavy videos that we do. Thanks to you guys, we can continue to make the videos that we do without resorting to clickbait or padding out videos with fluff. I do apologize if I sound kind of tired in this recording. It's been a very long week, but I want to make sure we get these videos out to you guys.
Thank you again for watching. We'll see you in the next one, guys. Happy hunting, hunters.
Bye.